Flow, a state of consciousness so focused that it amounts to an absolute absorption in an activity. It provides a sense of discovery, a creative feeling of pushing to higher levels of performance, into a new reality. This is the work of American-Hungarian Professor Csikszentmihalyi, and something that was ringing a bell to me as an athlete. We would call this the zone. Something you would always strive for but hardly ever could get. And it frustrated us. And I'm sure that many musicians or other stage performers have the same feeling, frustrating us to get to that same state of being. So it would interest me, how can you turn this state of being into some consistent, permanent part of your life? So how can you organize this flow? And looking at that, I realized that Csikszentmihalyi, in his research as a phenomenologist, had identified certain elements that were in this process of flow. And also that social scientists identified some conditions that may work in favor for this flow experience. But it was not until I was reading and hearing the work from Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, I would say, who studied world myths and stories and made sense of it. He wrote the book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and in it he shows unmistakably that all these world tales have some common thread to them. They have a structure. And that's the structure I was needing, because you cannot get to this state of consciousness, which flow is, sheerly through cognition. Much of our behavior is guided through our unconscious. And the beauty of Campbell's work is that it works on a symbolic level. So it was not until 2002, when the Dutch Olympic Committee asked me to help for the mental training towards Athens, that I realized maybe this journey, this hero's journey, makes sense. Because we're going towards the old Greece, and these athletes, of course, want to become immortal and reach the top of Mount Olympus. So that's when we actively started designing the process of how to get into flow, not just once or by chance, but repetitively, and the idea of sustainable performance was born. Now I will lead you through that journey, which is the hardware. Of course, we have given activities and some proof that it works, but the hardware is just the structure, just as Campbell said it, and you are to download your own experience into it, so it starts to make sense. It becomes your journey and not mine. Well, here's what the journey looks like. First of all, it's not the linear process, but more cyclical, or maybe like a spiral. When you're at the end, you start again, you continue. And the journey consists of 5 dimensions. The first one is the calling. If you don't know where you're sailing, any wind will do. The second one is fellowship. One finger cannot lift a pebble. The third one is the dragons. Where you stumble, the treasure lies. The fourth one is performance. Stepping into the middle of the moment. And the last one is return. Coming home with the Holy Grail. Now I will get a little bit more into each of these dimensions. The calling is really about dreaming, about truly listening what you're supposed to do in life, what your purpose is. And that's really a search. It's not just an analytical process in which you can just determine where to go. You have to really sense, listen on all levels. But once you have that dream, that direction, you can determine what it is they're going to do actually, your goal. Another part is that you need to know, have some point of self-reference and have some understanding who you are, some qualities about yourself. Then we move to the dimension of fellowship. And this one really debunks the idea that we do it alone, the idea of the Lone Ranger. We are, as on our existence on this planet, hardwired to work together. And this is all about how we can use that social intelligence which is already available to us. Who, for instance, is instrumental in your success? Then, the third dimension, dragons, is all about becoming completely objective to yourself. Where you stumble, the treasure lies. How do you cope with difficulties? How do you look at some of the dark sides of yourself? Shadow work. The fourth dimension is about performance, stepping in the middle of the moment. This is a really important part because in performance you can learn as in no other place. So practice has nothing to do with performance. Of course, you need to know what you're doing, but performance is a learning environment in and of itself. The last dimension is the return, descending from Mount Olympus back to ordinary life. How can you tell people what deeply and profoundly has changed in you, and how can you share that with them? This is a really important transition towards becoming the new person. To conclude, it's important to realize that it's your journey and not our journey or my journey. And many who did this, from the stage performers and the Olympic athletes, report that indeed flow was no longer haphazard, it became from a state to a trait to them. So, welcome to the journey.